the 17th. Good, thank you. This is the 17th conversation we've had. All of them are recorded and are available on the IIID website. The program is fairly standard. We give the speaker 20 minutes, 25 minutes to give a short presentation. And after that, there's a time to discuss and ask questions. And we stop exactly at the hour. So we've got 58 minutes from now. We record it, so that should be fine. And I would like to introduce Robert Linsky, our speaker of today. And at the moment, he's working for the Clear Info Group in Boston, in the United States. He was for a long time, until recently, the Director of Information Design of NAPS, a very large company there. He's been very active in PLAIN, the Plain Language International Association in America, actually global Plain Language Association. And he has been on or he's still very much involved in the Massachusetts College of Art and Design as a trustee and as a member of the board there. So I would really like to give Robert Linsky the floor, and I look forward to his presentation.
Great, thank you, Carol. The first thing I've got to do is get the screen. I think I have.
Okay, you share that's better. Thank you. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, everybody can see that? Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. My presentation is about the way communication should be. But I have to start out with a confession. I don't design anything. I take boring, mundane, hard to understand communications and create communications that are clear, accessible, simple, and effective. I have a methodology which I think is probably familiar to a lot of people, but it's talks about analysis and content and design and usability testing. And one of the pieces of this process that I use is when I start a project, I bring people together in the organization that I'm working with, people who touch the communications. They all come around the table, and that way they can all bring their own ideas to the project. They feed off each other, and they understand what everybody's problems are and issues, and they come up with an agreement about issues as we go forward. That way, when we get to the end of the project, everybody has bought in, all of the departments, and it goes very smoothly and is completed. But I'll tell you an interesting story. I did a project not many years ago of a statement that had a coupon that you could mail in with additional funds for your account. And we found out in doing the analysis and the research and everything that there were 14 different envelopes. And everybody around the table agreed that that seemed like a lot of envelopes and we should be able to narrow it down to one or two. And it was after this meeting that I happened to do kind of a paper trail where I walked through different departments and talked to people and asked them to show me what their job was and how it worked in the flow. And I came across one department that received the envelopes coming in. And I mentioned to the person of the head of the department who wasn't in our meeting that we had thought about and sort of decided to reduce the number of envelopes. And she told me that that would create a nightmare for them because each envelope had a lockbox number, and the check and the coupon had to go to a certain place, and that was the way that system worked. If we had reduced it down to only a couple of envelopes, it would have created a mess for her and her department. So that's kind of the reason why things like this should be, you get all these people together to understand what everybody's problems and issues are and work together. And of course, the most important thing when you're doing a project is to understand what the goals are. These are just some possible goals, but you need to understand what those goals are, and then you need to be able to see if you can achieve those. And here are a couple of stats of things that I've worked on. I did a brokerage statement a number of years ago. We eliminated just one page of the statement, and we saved over $100,000 a month in print costs. And then for a retirement company, I looked at their retirement and withdrawal forms. They had 27 different ones. And through reviewing them and consolidating them and rewriting them, we came down to 3 from the 27. And then there was a company years ago who did a survey of people filling out forms. And they found out that a lot of the people stopped filling out the form when it was confusing or they didn't understand it. And in addition to them stopping to filling out the form, it turned out that 58% of the people stopped using the product or the service of the company that generated the form because it was so confusing. And then we did a quarterly statement for a big company, and it turned out that making the statement easier to understand, clearer, they reduced the number of customer service calls by 170,000 in 9 months, some saving of nearly $3 million. So here's a couple little case studies. The first one is on healthcare. This was a part of a discharge document, 7 pages that were given to a patient when they left the hospital. This is only one little section that I'm highlighting on, but the reason is that this section's title talks about blood thinner that you're given when you're leaving the hospital. Looks like there are 4 bullet points, but the bottom bullet point at the bottom, the last 5 lines or so, talks about when your next appointment is, who you should contact, who the doctor is, contact number. Has nothing to do really with the blood thinner medication and what you need to know about it. So this information was basically buried. And in the redesign of this, we created larger content, larger point sizes. We separated contact and we highlighted the next appointment information. All things to make it easier for people to understand the communication. Here's another one. This was a chemo management card. And this was given to people who had to understand, about chemotherapy and what was there, what was going to happen, and what they needed to know about when they went home. This is a 2-sided card, a little card you could just put in your pocket. But it was so confusing because some of the more important things were on the back side, and there was a lot of duplicate information. So we took a look at it, and we were able to put all of the information on just one side. We highlighted things to avoid and special notes at the very top, when to notify your doctor, and then the early effects, late effects, side effects came down toward the bottom. We also put in the name of the organization and a phone number you could contact someone, which wasn't on the original card. Here's another area. This is correspondence. And here I'm talking about a RMD letter. Now in the United States, we have something called a required minimum distribution of funds from a retirement account. So when you reach a certain age, you must take money out of your retirement account. It's a percentage and it's mandated. So this company sent out this letter telling a person how much was being taken out and what the tax year was. It was a 2-page letter. The second page had the name and signature of the person writing the letter, plus the contact information if you needed to ask questions. It was on the second page. It didn't make a lot of sense. On the first page, on the top right-hand corner, there was information that wasn't really needed, and that's a more important place for things like contact information. Plus, there was content here that really didn't need to be on this page. One other thing was that if you don't know what an RMD is, this letter is sending you to the website, to the government website, so that you can find it yourself. So in the redesign letter, we created a plain language definition for what an RMD is. We highlighted the amount of money in the tax year, and then we put a heading in the top right-hand corner so that you would immediately know exactly what this letter is about. We put the contact information here and the contract information so that all of that important information is easily found in the top right-hand corner of the letter. Which leads to the fact that one of the things about doing clear communications is you need to be concerned about placement. And this is funny. This is a funny picture. I actually took this picture because I was down in Florida and I came across this on the road. It took me a few drive arounds in order to be able to shoot this picture, but it was really amazing to see how they just arbitrarily put these signs up and you couldn't read them. So another case study of annuity benefits, our client called this the death benefit kit. And one of the big problems was that people were not filling out the form correctly, and they didn't understand where they fit. And they gave them 6 pages so that you could read through all 6 and understand how you were the beneficiary, whether you were a spouse or a child or somebody else. You had to read all through this text in order to figure out exactly how you qualified. So in the redesign, we rewrote all of that. We got it down into one page where we created this matrix so that you could very quickly and easily figure out where you were fitting to get the annuity benefits. We also created a checklist because there was other documentation you had to provide at the time of submitting the form. So this led to a reduction in incomplete forms from 80% down to 25%. By the way, just to mention, I wrote NIGOs at the top here. NIGOs means not in good order. And so we reduced it from 80% down to 25%. But the really interesting piece about this and the unexpected benefit to the company, one of the problems was that people, because they were having trouble filling out the form, they just said, give me my money and I'll figure out what I want to do with it. So that a lot of people were not leaving the money with the company and they were losing a lot of assets. So what happened because of this, they retained an increase amount of 30% more assets because it became clearer to understand and the options there were more helpful. This is an insurance example. It's an application package that was used by the agent when they sat down with the customer and they went through the application with the customer, helping them fill it out. It was very confusing. There were redundant questions. There were marketing questions, which the agents just didn't understand why they were even there. There were numerous places for signatures because certain information required signatures. And one of the things we did in the new version is we brought all of that information to the front so that we can eliminate multiple places for signatures. The result of this, by the way, was a 3-fold increase in the agent satisfaction. They were able to work with a new customer quickly, get through the application, and move on to their next customer. So here's a couple of examples of the pages. Now, when I presented this to the client, I presented 2 or 3 different solutions. They immediately rejected this one. And the reason they rejected this one was because of that column on the left-hand side. They thought if we eliminated that column, we could then spread the text across the page and reduce the number of pages. What I explained to them, even if you spread the text across the page, you weren't really going top to bottom, eliminating anything, because you still had all these different lines that had to be filled out. But we use this column for a couple of things. One is to highlight places that they needed specific information, or they needed to make sure they answered, or they needed some other documentation, places that were giving people problems. The other thing that we did was that we gave them a space for agents to make notes and calculations, because in the original one, they were writing all over the place because they had to do that when they talked to a customer. So when I explained all that and we went through it, this is the solution that they finally went with. And you can see on the left-hand side here, all of these places for signatures, and that eliminated multiple signatures further on in the document. This example is on utilities. This is an electric company, and they had 6 different templates when we started. We reduced it down to 4 and eliminated tons of pages. The reason I've circled this is a before example, is because this is one of the examples that I was given to review. And I spent about 2 hours trying to figure out how the amount due was achieved with all these figures here. And it's very confusing, and you can't sort of say, oh yeah, you add this, you subtract this, because it doesn't make sense the way it is laid out and written. So I brought this to my client and I said, can you explain to me how they got to the figure of this page? And she looked at it and she said, no, I can't. And she had to take it to someone else within the electric company to explain how it worked. So it was very confusing. We created a new statement where we highlighted the amount due and the date and the account number, very easily to find on the first page. We also created a summary section which didn't appear on previous bills. We highlighted who to contact if you have an outage, which was kind of buried in the 2nd or 3rd page in the original one. We also brought up the customer service information, which was on a subsequent page in the original. And then through our original testing, we found that a lot of people wanted a usage chart. So we created a usage chart. We also gave a space to the right of that usage chart for marketing messages, so that the electric company can use that for different promotions or whatever they felt that they needed. On the back side, trying to explain things easier, we had a breakdown of the current charges and of the billing factors, which even to this day, it's very confusing to me how this all works together. But this was an attempt to try and make it easier for people to understand what their bill was all about. We also highlighted all the different ways the bill could be paid and making it easier for people to pay the bill. A couple of things that we learned about this, we got some good customer feedback, but I think that the key piece here is the bottom one. It says great implementation of feedback from our previous meeting. It shows that the company listens to its customers and takes the time to apply its lessons learned. And that to me just really shows and says a lot about, working with the company and working with customers and doing the usability testing. Another interesting about the testing that we did is one of the people that we talked to was in charge of the billing statement for the whole company that he worked for. And this was a company that had multiple locations and multiple meters. So they were getting stacks and stacks of paper because it was so much detail and information. And what he told me is he took a piece of cardboard and he cut out little windows so that he could place it over the first page of the bill and only see the information that was relevant to him so that he could easily and quickly pay the bill. So I thought was kind of fun to hear. So here are some of the benefits. The biggest benefit here is they saved over $1,000 in postage per day. And that does include everything else that they saved. They had fewer customer complaints, and they were actually getting calls from customers saying how much better the statement was, and they were appreciative of it. So it's all about the customer experience. And this is a piece from a company, an organization called Broadridge. They do a lot of surveys and gather information, but this is just some of the feedback that they receive from different customers in different industries. So this is not a bill. This is actually a funny story that I just wanted to tell. Because one of the things that really gets to me is when I get a document of communications, at the very top, it says, this is not a bill. And that really says to me that whoever generated that communications didn't want to take the time, understood that there was a problem, didn't want to take the time to figure out what the problem was and how to correct it. So they just slapped this on the top of the bill. And many years ago, I had the opportunity to speak with the Commissioner of Insurance in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And she told me that they sent out a communications that had some personal information and dollar amounts for automobile owners. And what was happening was they were getting checks. People were sending in checks thinking they owed money. So the solution was they wrote, this is not a bill at the top of the bill. They thought that would solve everything. Well, what turned out to be, this was a communication that was supposed to be kept with your insurance documents, and because it was very important. So when they put this is not a bill at the top, people were throwing it away. So it really comes down to the moral of the story is you need to redo it. So just a couple of last things I wanted to end with here. I like putting this out because it's really kind of food for thought. People often do much more than interpret words and pictures when they read. They form an impression of the organization that created the communications. So in closing, the way communication should be: clear, accessible, simple, and effective. Thank you. Questions?
A beautiful last, what a beautiful last slide, Robert. It is.
I collect signs, and I've got a whole slew of them. I could spend all day just showing you some of the crazy signs that I've found.
It is quite amazing. Any questions? Who would like to start?
Actually,
Christian?
Christian, yeah.
You're muted.
Yeah,
Great, thanks.
can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Veronica, I didn't want to take your word.
Okay.
But, thanks for that inspiring talk. I was just wondering, I'm sitting here in a small town in Austria, working as an information designer, and I was just wondering whether there's a different culture maybe in the United States, but how can you actually raise awareness for these issues? I find that's the main topic really, to well, to actually convince somebody, because in my experience, you sort of get an answer when you point out some of the things you said. Actually, you get an answer, something like, well, we got this advertising agency who does all this stuff for us, and so now and so forth. So how can we raise awareness for these things? I don't know.
Well, I think you bring up a great point. It's one of the things that I struggle with all the time. You know, one of the issues, I have similar issues, and when I'm told, oh, we've got a graphic designer or an ad agency, they don't really want to do this kind of work, first of all. I did a new business insurance policy years ago, and when I walked into the in-house design department, they all threw up their hands and said, oh, we don't want to touch that, take it away. It's not pretty from a graphic design standpoint, what I do. I love it. I enjoy it. I love typography. I love working with, in a very confined area. So I try and push back on that. And unfortunately, you have to find a sponsor within an organization who understands what you're trying to do. And sometimes it even says you have to show examples. You can't just say, well, here's the solution. It's got to be what's the before, what's the after, what are the results. It takes a lot of work. And I've been trying this for many years, and I've gotten to the point where it's still taking a lot of effort to talk to people and convince people, the value that we bring.
I have a question regarding the testing.
Yep.
Do you have can you rephrase? How many people do you normally test with? Or does that vary from situation to situation?
No, it turns out, and I picked this up from other people over the years, but we do what's called one-on-ones, where we sit with one person and walk through a series of questions and scenarios to find out if they understand where to find information, what the information is, how they can use the information, whatever it might be. We found that you can do that with as few as 7 people, because you get beyond 7 and the answers start repeating themselves. So what we normally do is we'll do it in different locations. If a national company, for instance, we'll do it in different locations so that we have different demographics. And depending upon the kind of project it is, there may be different types of people. For instance, the utility bill had just single meter homeowners, residentials. That was one type of people. But then they had commercial clients, customers. So that was a different type of customer. And you'd have to do each one separately with basically the same kinds of questions, but you'd have to talk to them differently. Because what you do is you show them, what we do is we show them a sort of a fake real example and walk them through it. I'll tell you, just a quick story on that. When I did this auto insurance policy, the way the company worked was if you signed up with them, they would send you all of this information in an envelope. It was like 25 pieces of paper all folded individually. And 2 weeks after that, you would get your bill. So when we did our testing, we would hand someone the envelope and say, okay, you signed up for this company for your auto insurance. Here's the package that comes in the mail. open it up and tell me and show me what you do with it. So they opened it up. And this one person, he took everything out. And as I said, there were like 25 or 30 different pieces of paper. There was a booklet, there was, the deck page, there was a letter, there was all sorts of things. And he made these beautiful, neat piles of the different kinds of, I'm thinking, probably the only person in the world who reads this stuff. And so I started asking him questions, and it turns out he had absolutely no clue about auto insurance. He just liked making neat piles. It's amazing what happens when you do testing and talk to people.
Claudia Montalvao, you had a question?
Hi, good afternoon here. Thank you, Professor Robert, for your presentation. Professor Veronica already asked you something that I would like to know, but I have another question about, the comprehensibility tests. You said about usability tests, and my main point is about how do you proceed this, any kind of comprehensibility test because we know when we show the first version, that's awful most of the time. And when we show the second version, people say, oh, it's beautiful, it's better. And so how do you deal with this kind of situations? You just mentioned one story now, but I would like to know how is your experiencing in usability testing in these cases
Okay.
that you showed? Yeah.
Sure. When we ask questions to people, we don't say things like, do you like green or blue? Do you like this layout or that layout? That, I hate to say it, but is almost irrelevant. What we do is we ask questions like, if you need to call customer service, where's that information? Can you find that information? If it's a bill, how much do you owe? Why do you owe it? Do you understand what this term means? Things like that. We take out the like kind of stuff because that confuses things. What we do in the beginning, just to step back a little bit, is we'll get whatever information we can get from the client about what the issues are. And then we'll do the testing with the original or the current state samples and find out if there are any other issues that the customer, our client, doesn't understand or didn't know. And then after we've come up with a solution, we take it back out to testing and do two things, basically, is make sure that we've corrected all the problems that we've identified. And more importantly, actually, is to make sure that we haven't created any new problems. But the light kind of stuff, or the graphic design piece, we steer clear of that because it's not helpful. It's not going to give us the answers we're looking for. It's how you can find information, do you understand the information? What can you do with that information?
Okay, thank you.
There's a
Marina?
question from Marina. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. So it's I'm really happy to be here. I'm sorry that I can't share my screen at the time, but I would like to thank Mr. Linsky for this amazing presentation and for Karel for hosting this event. I teach in Greece at the graphic design department at the American College of Greece, and it happens that I offer my students a midterm project, which is about actually redesigning a form that doesn't work. And to my surprise, they liked this project because I thought they wouldn't find it too creative or fun or whatever. So it's been like now 4 weeks into the project, and they have done amazing work.
Right.
And so that's one part of what I want to say. The other thing is that while I was setting the brief, and I had some difficulty in finding sources, and I can share my screen if I may, Carol.
I think you can.
Let me see. I'll have to
Let me
find
try.
it.
I think
Just a moment.
it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I found a few sources, and I'm really lucky that Mr. Sless is present here because because he's one of the latest sources that I could find, and I have included in my reference list for the students. But what I noticed was that a lot of research apparently was reported to have been done in the 80s, that was reported in the 90s, and a few in the 2000s, and then maybe now in the late 2000 and or yeah. So I would like to ask where we can find more information about references, and maybe Mr. Sles can help us there. But thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity to talk about this amazing and very, very important work. So let me just stop sharing. Yeah.
David, do you want to jump in on that quickly?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay. Yes, we've been rather quiet for some time because we've been preoccupied with a number of other things that have taken us away from the things we're really interested in, having to deal with things that have been rather important, but really not as interesting. Anyway, it's, by the way, Robert, it's nice to see you, and nice to see you following some of the things we're doing. That's great. Let me just say on this, I think there needs to be, our sense of it is that you need a much more focused approach to these things. A lot of these types of projects, in our experience, actually fail. They're lovely things to do with students, and that's incredibly important because it really does open up a whole new world to students of all the issues and so on. But many of these projects actually fail. Now, they don't fail necessarily in the execution of a project like this, but when you get further down the track in the usage of these things, there's a very strong tendency for these to fall apart. And there are multiple reasons for that. So that's something that's been preoccupying me certainly for a long time, and how one gets over that. As far as methods go, you have to really pin everything together so that you start off by, in a sense, asking the clients a very simple question, that is, what do you want people to do with this information? Okay, that's kind of starting point. But moving on from that, you not only have to then work out whether they can indeed do it with the existing material, and then whether there are any changes once you make changes to the information, and then people can use it. Having said that, the rate at which these things deteriorate after you've done the design and the way they get altered can very quickly destroy all the good work you've done. And for a long time now, we've been monitoring projects we do. And what we find, for a whole variety of reasons, the first thing is that things change, particularly if you're working in an area like insurance and finance and so on, because the regulatory frameworks within which these things work also change. So the things have to change. Also, people change. The clients themselves get other ideas, get other ways of doing it. So there's a lot that's going on here, which is non-predictable. Now, by that I mean you can't actually predict in all things. It's a bit like being a weatherman. You know, you can give a broad outline, but there's a hell of a lot about weather that is totally non-predictable. Look up any day at a cloud and try and predict what shape that cloud will take in the next 10 minutes. And there's no way of doing it. Okay. Now, a lot of the stuff we're working on is at that level. There are things here that you can't predict. And the only way you find out is by obviously retesting. And you have to have benchmarks for what worked before, what doesn't work now in carry all the time. The other thing is that hardly ever gets mentioned is you've got a lot of stakeholders in operations like this, not just internal ones, but external ones. And if you haven't got not only a connection with them, but an understanding with them and working through with them, then the thing will fail almost immediately. Because there's always some bright spark you didn't talk to who decides that something needs changing. And because they weren't participating in the first place, and they come to it fresh, they think they can make a wonderful contribution to it. But they don't know the kind of methods you use or why you did things the way you did. And so things deteriorate very quickly. And so these are, if you like, little snowflakes in a world that is constantly melting and changing.
Thanks.
That would be pessimistic.
Yeah. We have a couple more questions, David. There's one, Chiara, and one from Henning. I think, I'm not sure who was first, but
yeah.
Chiara, would you like to start?
Yes, please. Congratulations on your presentations and on your work. I was curious about images, especially icons. How important do you consider use of images like icons for enhancing the comprehensibility of a document? And also, do you test the icons in your documents?
Yeah, icons are valuable and helpful. I don't think they're usable in a lot of places. Most of the work that I do is really confined in terms of space constraints and content. And if I can use icons in a way that's going to help someone navigate through a document or find something easier, then we'll use them. And we'll test them at the same time to find out if people understand what the icon represents and if it is useful to them.
Henning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Linsky. I'm working as a lawyer in Berlin, but I'm trying to be not one of those people responsible for designing bad documents. I'm very grateful for all these inspirations. My question is, are you working with a specific tools like do you use Microsoft Word or what else when designing or redesigning documents and forms?
Well, I find Microsoft Word really hard to use. And I actually stick to a design tool like InDesign. It's just easier for me. And I've always had problems with Microsoft Word. It does things that I don't understand. And when I try and make changes, it creates all sorts of problems. But my work, it sometimes gets printed. Sometimes it goes online, so I can create a PDF or something. But in any event, whatever I do in InDesign can be translated to whatever outcome could be.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, maybe just to comment on that. In a lot of cases, our clients need to work within their set of tools now, which may well be Microsoft Word. So we have to find a way of designing it so it can work within those tools.
Yeah.
There are severe ethical issues with that organizations demand the use of Microsoft Word. Not commercial organizations, that's acceptable, but I'm thinking of governmental organizations like the European Medicines Agency, the FDA, demanding us to work with Microsoft Word, which is inexcusable. That should be open source software and should be available for all of us without paying the fees and license fees to Microsoft. That will upset the FDA and the European Medicines Agency incredibly, but it's at the moment it's an ethical approach not to accept other companies or organizations to use their format. Jane.
Yeah, I was going to say something about Microsoft Word as well, because I've done quite a few templates in it. And, you know, I've simply worked with organizations like an NHS trust in this country who have to work with it because that's what they've got. And they have to produce their documents in-house, and it has to be done that way. And they send me some of their previous efforts, which are absolutely dreadful and very similar to the forms that Robert's sent us as the before things, which are obviously just passed on to a secretary with minimal word skills and told just do this. I think some of us have learned to kick Word into submission, which you absolutely have to do, which I have, and I have tried very hard to provide a lot of technical support to the people who have to produce these in-house documents in Word with a template and teach them to understand what styles are and why you don't just copy and paste from one document to another because it loads all this Times New Roman crap into your document. But it is very difficult, but it is something that we have to work with. So, you know, sometimes we just have to, as I say, kick Word into submission.
Oh, absolutely. I can't agree more. There's not a way of surviving.
Quite.
But it would be nice that every now and then Microsoft would listen to suggestions for improvements.
Please.
I've constantly tried to get in touch with Bill Gates and he never returns my calls.
Actually, I just want to raise a toast to David Sless because I think he got up at 4 a.m. today to be with us. So,
Oh well, I'm still awake.
Well done.
yeah, good to see you, David. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely to see you too. Yes.
Yeah, well done, David.
Yeah, it's very nice to see so many familiar faces that I haven't seen for a long time. Great.
So it's obviously much warmer in Melbourne than it is in York today. Heated.
Yes, yes. For some reason, which no one has told me, it's actually very mild weather here at the moment, whereas I gather, particularly I noticed, Claudine, you're facing terrible floods and rain, which is really very distressing. But then you're at the front line of that, which is very important.
Yeah, I think we've lost Claudine.
Oh,
Yeah, she sent a note saying that she had to get to campus.
Okay. Yeah. Are there any other questions?
David?
Not so much a question as a comment, and first of all to say thank you so much to Robert for that presentation. I was really I was muted, but I was chuckling away at some of those examples. But I was also struck by the way in which the quote from, I think, was it Broadridge, the agency with a lot of user quotes from different sectors, chimed with the things that you were telling us, that there were common threads in whatever sector you were we were working. We did a lot of work in healthcare, communications, but you've talked about insurance, bill, utilities billing, and it's all about, tell me what, we could have cut and paste those comments from one sector to another, because it's all about what do I need to know? What do I need to do? And that's why. And you said that your outputs were not pretty, Robert, but I think there's a certain, well, there's an elegance and an attractiveness to me about a well-designed form that you just don't get from spiky statements or just stuff that's thrown on the page. And we know that from medicines leaflets you can use the same words, and the design makes all the difference. But it's not the prettifying design, it's the thoughtful interactive design of saying, okay, what does this, how do I use this, who's the person I need to, and so you come in, your designs were coming back again and again to what's the contact detail, what's my next action, when's my next appointment. I mean, this is, and I'll shut up in a minute, but just to say thank you for that, and to say that in terms of user testing, I find it's, if only we could get the gratitude of users who come across good leaflets or bills and get it back to the client, which you seem to have managed to do in some ways. We could tackle what David was talking about and saying, why do these things atrophy? Why don't the solutions last? Well, if only we could be in there with the users all the time, maybe in a culture where feedback, the digital culture where feedback loops are so well developed, maybe there's an opportunity for us there to make things that last.
Yeah, thanks. Raluca, you raised your hand.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you. Sorry, I wasn't aware it was such an intimate discussion, but I wanted to ask Mr. Linsky and Mr. Sless, who are basically veterans in this industry, how do they see tools such as ChatGPT? What would be the impact on this industry of AI tools?
I think AI is going to have a major impact across all industries. I wrote an article not too long ago trying to point out where it doesn't necessarily come up with plain language, because I was actually doing a plain language version of the required minimum distribution definition, and I went online and I got a couple of different definitions, and I let AI try and come up with one, and I came up with a better one. But I think it's something we have to be aware of. I mean, I was listening not too long ago on the radio, and AI can do almost anything now. Pictures and voices. And, I don't really know how it's going to impact in the long run, but it's certainly going to change things. David?
Yeah. Sorry, Robert, I forgot to say I was very much enjoying your presentation. It looked very familiar territory, and also some very good work in there. One thing I wanted to say, which is important, and it's important in relation to I think, your work, often the very best work that we as information designers do is invisible. That is to say, the audience for it don't look at it and go, ooh, ah, the way they are expected to do if they're looking, say, at a piece of advertising. It's as if the information itself is almost, or rather the document itself is invisible, because what they're interested in is working out what the hell it's all about. And so they move to that, and they don't necessarily even notice that they've got a designed object in front of them. And I think that look of things, which is, as you say yourself, it's quite ordinary. It doesn't aim to be, a sexy piece of design in that sense, is actually very important in our work. But a lot of our work needs to be almost invisible in a sense. It's our job in the sense is to make life easier for people, not harder. So that it's a kind of important thing to do things in an ordinary way, in a way that the genre itself is very, they recognize it, you know, and they don't feel that it's sort of, you know, they're being conned. I mean, a lot of things that come, say, for example, from the financial industry is so glossy, and there are so many happy people and children, you know, in their advertising, which bears no relationship to the life any of us lead. You know, it's theatre. Anyway, that was one thing. In relation to the artificial intelligence issue, I really think that's something we need to be very concerned about. Not because it's going to take over our jobs, far from it, but I think there's a long tradition in the software industry, and Microsoft is a prime example of this, where you introduce into the market a product long before it's usable. And you just kind of, you know, you do all the right commercial stuff by way of promoting it and so on. So lots of people climb on board, get hooked into it. It becomes a kind of addiction almost, and they're stuck with it. The Microsoft word is typically that. I think someone once said that if anyone tried to produce a car like that, they wouldn't get very far because the wheels would keep falling. You know, it's a kind of, it's a habit of that industry to do that. So a lot of the things we're seeing at the moment are really not artificial intelligence, they are human stupidity and human ignorance. A lot of these things are developed and produced and put into the public domain long before they're usable. Now, when it comes to things like plain English, for example, the version that's produced by a machine is almost inevitably going to be less competent than one produced by someone who is a real expert in the field. Now, I think we've got a lot of concern because of no doubt that artificial intelligence is going to, that people are going to try to use it because they think it's better than the graphic designer or the writer or the information designer who lives down the corner. And I think that's really something that all of us need to be concerned about. And unless we have the data which supports us as opposed to the machine, then we're going to have this as a very deep and recurring issue for us to deal with.
Okay, wonderful. Diana, you had a quick question?
Well, as the time is up, I just don't open the box of Pandora. So I think that would be very unkind. So for that reason, I just lowered my hand again.
Well, thank you. Then you're absolutely right. It is the hour at the moment. So thank you very much for attending. I was really pleased with this session because we've got people from all over the globe: Melbourne, Rio, California, Boston, Athens, Italy, Berlin. So it was really a truly global event. We hope to have a similar event on the 7th of March. We're still looking for a speaker and we have several contacts, but we haven't gotten a final agreement yet. We'll approach you, you get an email from us when and where the next speaker, or when is clear, 7th of March around the same time, but who the speaker is and what he or she will be talking about. Thank you very much for attending, and I really hope to see you soon in one of these events or the next event. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks so much.
Bye now. Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks a lot.